Good evening. Wow, what a great group. Fantastic, you filled the room, especially on a day like today when it's difficult to come in from the outside. My name is Tom Reese. I'm the president at Concordia University here in St. Paul, and I'm very honored to welcome all of you to our campus for this terrific opportunity to hear Ben Greenfield speaking to us on the things that he knows a lot about: health, fitness, holistic lifestyle, and all those other great things. A little bit about Concordia University. We've been in this location for 120 years. We'll be doing our 121st year next year. Private Christian university with a wide range of majors and minors and a lot of graduate programs and undergraduate programs, which we're very proud of. So we're excited to have been serving higher education in this location for so long and plan to be here for many years to come. I'd like to share a little bit about Ben Greenfield, although you perhaps know most of the things I will say about him. Ben is, of course, the author of a highly popular fitness, nutrition, and wellness website, which features his blogs, his podcasts, and product reviews. He's a frequent contributor to Triathlete Magazine, Lava Magazine, Endurance Planet, and the Outdoor Sports Magazine, out there monthly. He's been featured in articles on WebMD, In Health, Prevention, Women's Running, and Inside Triathlon magazine. And in 2008, the NSCA voted him Personal Trainer of the Year. He recently published his widely acclaimed 17th book, Beyond Training. We have copies of that here if you'd like to take a look at that this evening. And it is the #1 best-selling triathlon book on Amazon.com. In 2013, Ben was named top 100 most influential individual in health and fitness. He has, among other things, served on the board of directors for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and has been called, in some places, the smartest man in fitness. So let's welcome Ben, who will be speaking to us on 10 tips for achieving the most out of business, body, and life. Ben Greenfield.
Oh, thank you, President Reese.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's so cool to see everybody here. Minneapolis is not a place where I've spent a lot of time, but it's beautiful. I went for a walk down by the river last night, and I'm staying down at the Commons by the university, and so I went to the university gym to work out this morning, and they're into their Gophers. I was working out and I had my Under Armour shirt on, and I thought that was just fine, but it was like a sleeveless Under Armour shirt, and they actually came up to me while I was working out and handed me a U of M shirt because apparently my shirt was inappropriate because it was sleeveless. So they're very modest too, apparently, at U of M. So anyways, tonight, it was kind of an interesting task with which I was tasked to talk about business, body, and life, because those are three things that are kind of tough to roll into one. But really, my goal tonight is to share with you a little bit about how I was able to find success pursuing my passion, and then some of the big wins for me. Like the stuff that's really worked out well for me as far as what I do in my day-to-day routine, in my daily life. And I'm going to share all of that with you. And I love, who in here listens to the podcast? Okay, so you know I'm like a Q&A geek, and I'm happy to take questions. And I'm going to allow some time for you all to ask your questions as well as I go. So, or not as I go. That will totally disrupt me and throw off my train of thought. Wait until the end, and then I'm happy to answer questions that you have about anything that I talk about, or maybe anything I don't talk about that you're curious about. Like, I don't know, my morning smoothie seems like the one I get the most questions about for some reason. People like smoothies. So why am I starting off with a Lord of the Rings slide? So when I was a kid, I was a complete nerd, complete geek. I sat in my room and I read fantasy novels all day long, like knights and dragons and castles and princesses and all that stuff. And I was a complete introvert, and I actually read Lord of the Rings. I think I read that series 8 times. I actually don't even like the movie now, and I got through the first one and couldn't watch any of the rest just because it was ruining the book for me. I was so into this whole medieval thing, and I wrote a ton. I actually wrote a 400-page fantasy novel, again, with all the dragons and the knights and the princesses and everything, by the time I was 12 years old. And my brother actually deleted it from our computer, which was like the worst day of my life. And I actually wanted to die at that point because I felt like my entire life's accomplishments were washed down the drain. But that's what I was into. I wasn't really into fitness. About the most I was into business was that I would save all my Halloween candy for about 6 months after Halloween, and then I would sell it to all the kids who were out of candy. So maybe I had a little bit of the entrepreneurial vibe at an early age. My father was a serial entrepreneur. He was a fireman until I was about 10 years old, and then he started a private ambulance service, then a series of coffee shops, a communication business. Now he's studying essential oils and water filters. So I've kind of seen my dad be a serial entrepreneur, and perhaps that's where I got a little bit of the business bug from. But ultimately, I wound up a few years ago as a bodybuilder and very into fitness. So I came a little ways from doing the whole fantasy novel thing to posing on stage in basically the equivalent of my mom's underwear. But, or in that picture, it almost looks like nothing at all. But, when I was 13 years old, my parents started to really push me into sports as a way to kind of get me to open up, because I literally would have to get ordered to come out of my room when we would have company over and have to look them in the eye and say, hello Ray, hello Shannon, look them in the eye, and then go back into my room. And that was the way that I lived my life. And so it was really sports that started to pull me out of my shell. My parents actually built a tennis court. They weren't rich, but they wanted us to have a place to be able to play and recreate. And I remember I actually had to paint the lines on the tennis court. That was my job. But they built this tennis court, and they actually got a tennis instructor for us and the neighborhood kids. Her name was Michelle, and I had a big crush on her. And so I really wanted to get good at tennis. That was my goal, was to get good at tennis so I could impress Michelle. And I really started to get not just into tennis, but into all the things I was starting to discover that got me better at tennis, like lifting little 10-pound dumbbells that my dad brought home from Gart Sports and running up the hill behind our house. And I started to study fitness and get into fitness and started to think about maybe the fact that I didn't want to go to college to become a computer programmer or go find some cool job at Legoland building castles or something like that, but that maybe I wanted to actually get into physical fitness and kinesiology. So that's what I started studying in college, and I really immersed myself in it, and I loved it. I walked onto the university tennis team. I played tennis. I studied exercise science. I went on to get a bachelor's degree in sports science with an emphasis in pre-medical studies. I got a master's degree in exercise physiology and biomechanics, and that was really what I started to live. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I went from college to business to what I do now, which is working as a freelance author and an online consultant and doing a lot, especially in the internet business industry. But before I do that, just in case you were concerned that I'm still walking around posing with gold flecks painted on my body, and that, by the way, is the secret to looking rich. You have to buy gold flecks and have, in this case, your wife paint them all over your body. I actually got into triathlon from bodybuilding. I cannibalized about 30 pounds of muscle mass and started doing triathlons, and over the past several years, I've done 10 Ironman triathlons and competed in the Hawaii Ironman World Championships. It's longer than the one that you see on TV that lasts an hour. It's I found this out when they don't have the commercial breaks, and not everybody actually gets to drive a Ford during the race. But anyways, I really got into triathlon and have had a great deal of experience coaching and competing in endurance sports and Ironman, and now I'm doing nothing. Now I'm a blank slate. Okay, so there was supposed to be a photograph up there of me jumping over the finish or jumping over the fire of one of the Spartan races. Have you guys seen the Spartan races now? That fire is about this tall, by the way. Like it's, they make it look a lot bigger in the pictures than it actually is when you're doing the race. But that's what I do now. Is I'm competing in Spartan and obstacle races, and y'all are going to be some of the first people I've actually told this to, because I haven't talked about this too much. But my goal before I'm 40 years old now, and I'm 32 right now, so I've got 8 years to do this, is to become the top Spartan racer on the face of the planet. So I want to become number one. So that's my goal right now, and what I'm training for on a personal level. Anyways, though, when I graduated after getting my exercise science degrees, I got a short stint in surgical sales, selling overpriced hips and knees in what I realized after a while, and my apologies to anyone out there who's an orthopedic surgeon or who's in surgical sales, but and what I realized was a completely broken medical system. At the time, I had thought about going back to school and becoming a physician, and this completely disillusioned me. And all the doctors who I spoke to told me not to become a doctor, anything but that. And you know, and it was really interesting. These guys had nice homes and they had boats and lots of money. They didn't really seem to ever have any time to actually do anything, though, with all of their physical and material goods, and they didn't seem happy. And so I decided to get back into what I loved and what I had gotten a lot of experience with in college, and that was as a personal trainer. So I opened up a series of personal training studios and gyms with some special twists on them that I'll tell you about a little bit later on. But I opened up these studios, I opened up these gyms, I started training people, I started hiring personal trainers to work for me, and I continued that extreme focus on just doing things right, immersing myself in studying, in applying what I'd studied and what I'd learned, and setting things up the right way. And I got results with folks. And I opened up 3 different personal training studios and gyms up in the Northwest in the Washington, Idaho area. And after running those for a few years, I was named by the National Strength and Conditioning Association as their National Personal Trainer of the Year, which is a big honor in the personal training industry. It just basically means you're the biggest fitness geek of them all. But I was on the covers of magazines, and I was actually speaking at industry events. I was speaking at national conventions for personal trainers and fitness shows and things of that nature, and even fitness business events where I was sharing about how to become successful with your own personal training studios and gyms. And then my wife went and got pregnant, and and so she was expecting twins, and my eyeballs about popped out when I saw the ultrasound that showed that we were indeed having twin boys. And it got me thinking about my business too, because at this point I was living the life of a personal trainer. I was waking up at 4 or 5 a.m., going to the gym, training people from 5 to 7 a.m., kind of getting off work for a little while, coming back from 11 to 1, training people during lunch, then training people during dinner and into the late hours, and finally getting home exhausted at 9 p.m. And I realized that was not sustainable. So I decided I needed to do something else. And I remember I was sitting at this fitness business show that I was speaking at, and some guy got up and he talked about how he wrote an online book. He actually called himself the Skinny Guy's Savior. And his book was about how skinny guys could put on a lot of muscle and not get sand kicked on their face at the beach anymore. And I didn't necessarily want to do that, but I was listening to what he was talking about, and I had no clue that you could actually make money on the internet, like selling things online, writing your books, taking the knowledge and actually publishing it online. And so I thought, well, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is what I need to do instead of running all these personal training studios and gyms. And so as I sat there listening to him, on my little yellow notepad right there sitting in my chair, I started to take notes about what he was doing, about, he was showing his sales funnels and his online web copy and how he put a program together and how he found a solution to a problem and asked people if they would actually buy that solution and tested his market and all this stuff. He was well before like Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek type of book, but some of that same stuff. And so I crafted this kind of idea while I was sitting out there in the audience. It was called the CEO Triathlon Dominator Package, and after the CEO Triathlon Group sent me a nice letter from their lawyer, a few months after, I actually changed the name to just the Triathlon Dominator. But I actually, between the time that my wife was expecting, it took me about 6 months to sit down in front of my computer to work moonlighting hours, staying up at my computer till 2 a.m., trying to figure out how to put together web pages, create PDFs, create audio programs, create videos, and put together this program for triathletes to use to train for Ironman triathlon. And my whole deal was that I wanted something that folks could use to train for Ironman triathlon without having to neglect their friends and their family and their career, and still be able to cross that finish line without feeling guilt about all the time that they'd spent training. So I put this together, and I sold it. I actually decided I wanted to sell it while I was down competing in the Hawaii Ironman World Championship. So actually I put it live on the internet the day that I went out to compete on the starting line, and then when I finished and crossed the finish line, I logged into my email to see if I'd sold any, and I had. It had actually worked. It sold a lot of products, and over the next 5 or 6 days, it moved about $50,000 worth of CDs and audios and videos, and I realized that I could actually tell people about the things that I was learning online and make a profit doing so. So that's what I did, was I launched an online program. And ever since then, you know, my kids are 6 years old now. And ever since then, for the past 6 years, I've just kind of rinsed and washed and repeated and taken what I've learned and written it down and put it out there for people. And, you know, I do CDs and DVDs, and I just did that book that's back there. And now I sometimes put on clothes. Usually I sit at home in my underwear podcasting now and doing writing. But I also do videos. I race for Team Timex, and they have me put together videos. I do training videos online. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit more about my system for doing that. But that's what I do now, is a lot of things kind of in the online industry. Not that I don't want to run personal training studios and gyms anymore, but that was kind of what I chose to move on to. That was a chapter of my life that I decided to open up. And of course, I just finished writing the book that's over there, the Beyond Training book, which is just a synopsis of the things that I've learned in the past 10 years or so in the trenches about everything from endurance to nutrition to lifestyle to mental and physical performance enhancement, legal performance enhancement. So that's basically what that book is all about. Now, that was a really quick kind of 10-minute overview of what I've been doing for the past 10 years. But over that period of time, there are some things I don't really talk about in my book. You know, I talk about some time management and things like that in the lifestyle section, but there are some things that I've picked up on that I've found to be real keys to daily success in business, in sports, and in life. And I'd like to share those with you tonight, if everyone is okay with that. So that's what I've decided to talk to you about tonight, are the 10 things that I think are really important. And you don't have to be a personal trainer, you don't have to be an online marketer. No matter where you're at in life, these are things that can help you out quite a bit. So let's just go ahead and delve right in. This is a picture of Mark Twain, lying in bed smoking a cigar, reading a book, which I do every night. Except the cigar. So he says, when we talk about the great workers of the world, we really mean the great players of the world. And I really like that because it relates to the biggest tip that I can give you, and that's to choose your passion. And I'm going to get even more specific than that. Just right now, while you're sitting there, think about what you liked to do when you were like 5, 7, maybe 10 years old. Like, what got you really excited about life? For me, it was reading, it was writing, it was medieval castles, which I'm not into right now, and I like to go outside and exercise and play outside, and obviously later that became a real passion of mine. But you know, for example, when I started that job straight out of college and was selling hips and knees, I was making a lot of money. They actually came and headhunted me out of my graduate degree in exercise science and paid me a lot of money to go sell surgical hips and knees. And I was making more than most of my classmates were straight out of college. But I was not living my passion. I wasn't happy. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how successful you are if you're not passionate about what you do. So think about what it was, and if you want to, you can write this down. Start to think about what it was that you did when you were a kid, that really got you excited when you were a kid, or what gets you excited now, and try and direct your life so that some part of what you do for your career is actually feeding that passion. And that may be something as simple as, for example, if you loved to write, but you're working in finance right now, and you don't like your work in finance that much, but you do like to write, you can take all that information and write a book. It's very, very easy to do something like publish information on Kindle right now. So choose your passion. That is something that I live by now, is I always ask myself, when any opportunity comes across my plate, whether or not it feeds that passion of what I like to do, reading, writing, and exercise and playing outside. Not speaking. I hate speaking. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking is in there too. That came up for me later on in life after I'd been kind of pushed into sports and everything. My parents decided to also push me into going on stage and doing speech and debate. So they put me into like parliamentary speech and debate, and I actually had to get on stage in front of people when I was in high school, and I actually found out that I liked it. Has anybody in here read The Power of the Introvert? The book, The Power of the Introvert? Really good. If you think you're introverted, really good book. One thing that I learned from that book is that I personally really kind of stink at one-on-one talking to people, and I'm really bad at like cocktail parties and stuff like that. What I'm good at is one-to-many. This book taught me that I'm okay when I'm speaking in front of people. I'm okay when I'm podcasting to a lot of people, when I'm putting a video out there that I know a lot of people are going to watch. Very interesting book if you're introverted, called The Power of the Introvert. Anyways, a little bit of a segue there, but choose your passion. Okay, so the next thing is to be different. I learned this early on that it really pays. So when I launched those personal training studios and gyms, rather than just like offer what everybody else was offering, which was like fat loss, muscle gain, some sports performance, what I did instead was I partnered up with a physician, and I moved into an open space in his sports medicine clinic. And I partnered with him to buy a bunch of VO2 max testing equipment and lactic acid threshold testing equipment. We put 2 high-speed video cameras in there, and I actually invested in this stuff. I went into debt to put this stuff into the facility, and then I went to every single doctor in town, and I marketed our facility as the place to go for the most cutting-edge, scientifically based training for their patients, for their clients. And we set ourselves up as like this concierge facility that was like kind of the last place that you'd go after you'd tried everything else that wasn't actually working. And we actually charged a lot more money than any other personal trainer or gym or studio in town was charging, but we set ourselves apart by doing that. And if anybody who had money in like the Spokane or the Coeur d'Alene area wanted to come and work with a personal trainer, they wanted to do a triathlon, they wanted to lose weight as quickly and safely as possible, they knew that that was the place to go because we differentiated ourselves in that manner. And I still differentiate myself, and people say bad things about me sometimes, like on forums, on the internet, places like that. And I've kind of realized that if people aren't saying something bad about you every once in a while, then you're probably not going to be very successful. Because to be successful, you have to differentiate a little bit. You got to be the ugly duckling sometimes. You got to go out and do something that's different than what other people are doing. For example, another thing that I do is I rarely wear my shirt when I'm putting a video up on YouTube. And believe it or not, I actually catch flack for that, and I don't care because it's different and it makes my video look different than some of the other exercise science videos that are on the internet. So there's just like little things that I do to try and differentiate, to make what I do stand out. So think about ways that you can be different in your industry, in your career, even in your training, you know, that training program example that I put up, that was different. I knew that every training program out there was based off of exercising for 25 to 30 hours a week to get ready for an Ironman. So I decided to do one that would let you train for 8 to 10 hours a week. That program was so successful because it was so different than anything else that was out there. So be different. That's a picture of the training facility, you know, like the fancy training facility that we had, and it was just way, way different than going to a gym. And that really turned out to pay off. Okay, so the next thing is to delegate and to outsource. That picture up there is of Marge, who I hired as a virtual assistant. She's actually from the Philippines. She's a work-at-home mom. And I hired her about 5 years ago when one of my business mentors told me that I was doing too many things, like putting together spreadsheets and doing research and emailing people and ordering little things for my business. Like I was doing too many things that somebody else could do. And I really balked. You know, I'm a cheapskate. I didn't want to pay somebody to do something that I knew how to do that I could just spend a little bit of extra time doing. But man, I remember what I hired her to do. The very first job that I gave her was, it was around the time that I was putting out that program. I wanted a list of every single triathlon coach in the country. And I wanted their contact details, their email. I wanted to email them and tell them about this program. That would have taken me like 3 days to sit down and put together. A lot of time that I wasn't going to spend being productive on something else. I literally had that, like I sent it to her and I woke up the next morning and it was in my email inbox. And I realized that maybe there is something after all to like delegating and outsourcing. So now I don't mow my lawn. It costs me money to have somebody else mow my lawn, but while he's mowing my lawn, I'm literally sitting inside writing or going outside and yelling at him because he showed up with the weed eater while I was trying to do a podcast. But basically I'm inside producing while he's mowing my lawn. You know, I've got another person who basically does, like, anytime I need anything that like a book, a bag of Brazil nuts, like anything, they go out and they find the very, very best deal on that. They order it and they get it sent to my house. They have my Amazon details and my credit card details and all that jazz. But again, it's the little minutes here and there. So I can spend time doing what I'm good at while somebody else does what they're good at. And there are services out there that do this for you, like Fiverr. Lets you get things done for $5. Like my podcast artwork, that cost me $5 on Fiverr, and it took like 2 hours. Fancy Hands is another one where people will grocery shop for you. I use websites like Elance and Odesk to get websites created for me. I use websites called 99 Designs to get graphic designs made up for me. But basically, I am a delegation and outsourcing nerd. Anytime anything comes across my plate that I don't want to do, I hire somebody to do it. I even have the wife of the guy who mows my lawn picks up my mail when I'm gone and scans it and sends it to me. And also whenever I have a letter that I need to mail, they take it to the post office. And again, like every single little thing that I can delegate or outsource, I do, and it frees up a ton of time. So that's tip number 3, is delegate and outsource. Think about things that you can do that free up time for you to do the things that you're good at. Okay, this is another thing that I do every single day. I produce. Today, I made a 30-minute video this morning from my hotel room, sitting there in my boxers, took out my microphone, shot the video, narrated it on PowerPoint. You could go watch it right now. You can see it was posted 4 hours ago. It's called What is the Best Multivitamin? I made that video and published it. Yesterday, I published a book on Kindle. I took 10 articles that I've written on raising healthy kids, and I outsourced the process of getting them converted into a Word document, formatted in Kindle format, and published to Kindle. Every single day, I produce, basically it's what I call producing art. It's like making art every single day. Because so much, especially in the online industry, but so much of the world these days in terms of establishing your expert status in terms of success, it's based off of developing trust with the audience that you want to reach out to by producing content. So every single day I write, I record. I'll tell you in a second like how I actually manage doing this and not getting confused by what I'm doing when. That's another technique that I use that I will share with you. But I don't let a single day go by where I don't, it's kind of like, I heard an author once describe it as the 2 crappy pages rule. Like every day they'd say, okay, I'm just going to write 2 crappy pages. I don't care how bad they are. You know, I wrote that book by setting a stopwatch. I actually used the Pomodoro technique. Anybody here know what the Pomodoro technique is? It's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I wrote that book using the Pomodoro technique of 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 2 times through. So that was 6 hours a week that I was writing. And the 5 minutes off, you just go outside and you look around, smoke a cigar, drink a few beers, whatever. But basically, you come back and then you work hard. So you work in sprints. It's just like exercise, right? High intensity interval training. You go on, you go off. You go on, you go off. That's the key to getting fit as fast as possible. Kind of the same deal with producing. So I use that Pomodoro technique, but I also produce every single day. I don't let a day go by where I'm not putting something out there in the world that will drive traffic back to me. And that's you know, fortunately what Google, if you're into doing something online, Google places a great deal of emphasis on that too, the amount of content that you make. So kind of on a related note to that, and that's just a picture of my blog where I put out a lot of that content. The next part is to do the hard thing every day, or do the hard thing first every day. How many of you, and I've been guilty of this, have your phone next to your bed when you wake up in the morning and you roll over and you either open Facebook or Twitter or your email or something like that? And then you get sucked in. And you're responding, and you're putting out fires, and you're doing what other people want you to do. You're letting other people direct your life, sometimes for the first half of the day, sometimes it spills into the entire day. I now live my life by the practice of doing the hard thing first. The hardest thing for me right now is quieting my body. It's meditating, it's breathing, it's this weird thing called journaling that I completely scoffed at until last year when I started doing it. Now when I wake up, I grab this little journal from my bedstand. It's called the 5-minute journal because it only takes 5 minutes, and I can do that. It's a lie, actually. It's false marketing. It's 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening. But you don't know that until after you get the book and you start journaling. But I do this journaling, and while I'm doing the journaling, I use an app to measure what's called my heart rate variability. I'll talk to you about that in a little bit, actually. And I do some deep breathing. I read a devotional after I journal. And then after I've done that, then I get out of bed and I have a little routine that I go through. I do a little bit of yoga while my coffee brews. I drink my coffee and I take a cold shower because that kind of sparks my day. It makes me tough. It amplifies what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which grows neurons in your brain, helps you to focus. So I do my cold shower, and then I pick the one thing for that particular day that I dread doing the most, okay? So I've already gotten the hard thing that I know I'm gonna have a hard time doing, the journaling and the meditation and everything. Then I choose the hard thing, the thing that's tough to do. And even though I loved writing when I was a kid, and even though writing was my passion, it's still tough for me to wake up and produce that art every day, produce something every day. So usually I produce first. And then finally, even though I'm still wired, because I did this for a few years, I'm still wired that whole time to be thinking, who's emailed me? Who's emailed me? I need to check my phone. What's going on Twitter right now? What's happening on Facebook? Has the world exploded and the entire neighborhood is on fire around me and everyone is dying and I'm the only one left sitting in my house working on this stupid article? But somehow the world is still turning when I finish the article and actually turn on the email. But the idea here is that I start off every day by doing the hardest thing for that day first. And by doing that, I'm able to produce a lot more. So think about the hardest thing for you to do every day and do that. For some people it's exercise, some people it's meditation, for some people it's writing, but whatever that is, do it. So like I mentioned, I have a system for producing and for creating what I call my external brain. What I mean by external brain is I'm very, very bad at remembering things. I don't know if anybody read Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, where Watson is talking to Sherlock, and Watson tells Sherlock some kind of a crazy fact, and Sherlock is like, okay, I'm going to try and forget that right away. I'm the same way. If my wife tells me something as we're driving in the car, I tell her, email that to me because I won't remember it. And that's just the way that we communicate on anything important. I have to write things down, and I've basically set it up so that I have a clear head. I'm never trying to remember if I emailed somebody or if I didn't email them, if I forgot to do something, if there's some honey-do list that I'm going to be in the doghouse for the next week because I didn't get done, because I've got everything written down. And the way that I do this is I combine my process of writing things down with a special thing called, I call it the bucket system. So I've been writing things down for a long time. Like, I discovered in college that when you write something down, it gets done. Like, you will check it off. But that ended up backfiring on me. I don't know if this has happened to anybody, but you start a checklist, and then it goes on to the next page, and the next page, and you just like check things off for one day until you're just exhausted with checking things off. Then you move on to the next day and pick up the next day on the part of the checklist that you didn't get done, and it's just this long, never-ending to-do list. So I figured out a way that works a lot better, and I call it the bucket system. So what I do is I've got a bucket for Monday, bucket for Tuesday, bucket for Wednesday, bucket for Thursday, so on and so forth. And I only do tasks that fall into that bucket on that specific day. Okay? So today is Tuesday. Like I told you, I made a video today. Tuesdays are the only day I will make a video. So if I get let's say a supplement company wants me to do a marketing video for them. If they email me on a Friday and tell me they want a video, boom, that goes straight into Tuesday's bucket. Wednesdays are podcasting days. That's about the only day that I'll actually sit down and do my own podcast. And I'm on other people's podcasts on other days, but Wednesdays is my podcasting days. Tuesdays and Thursdays are my consulting days. Like I mentioned, I wrote that book on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are my writing days. So whenever anything comes across my plate, I put it into the bucket that corresponds to that specific day. The way that I do this is I use a program called Evernote. It's just this free program. It syncs to my phone, it syncs to my Kindle, my e-reader, and it syncs to my computer. And so anytime I add anything to a bucket, no matter where I happen to be, it'll show up on that bucket on all three systems. And then when Monday rolls around, I open up Monday's bucket, I see what I've got going on for that day, and then I launch into Monday's list. And when I'm done with Monday, I'm done with Monday. I don't finish up Monday's list and then think, oh, now I move on to that video that I have to shoot. Because Tuesdays are video days, not Monday. So if I finish up everything on Mondays at 2 p.m., I've got the rest of the day to go play with my kids or go work out or play some tennis or do whatever it is that I want to do for that day. So it's like this concept of having mini checklists that go into specific buckets on specific days. I write everything down. I keep this external brain, but then I take it one step further and I put it all into buckets on specific days. And I've never, like, I don't know if I made up that tool or that system, but let's just call it Bucket TM, Ben's Bucket TM. We'll just trademark it right now. But yeah, I honestly don't. I'm sure somebody else owns it. Okay, so the next thing I do is read. So this is a screenshot of what I wake up to in the mornings. Now, one of the things that I do after I've done my yoga and my cold shower and my hard thing is either before or after I check my email, I read. I typically read anywhere from 40 to 60 articles a day. I use a program called Feedly that allows me to subscribe to different blogs, to different newsletters, to different journals, and it feeds all the content from each of those websites into one browser window. That again syncs with my phone and syncs with my e-reader. So I am constantly able to learn, and what I like about Feedly is it only gives me little snippets for each day. Like, it gives me little paragraphs for each, so I can decide whether I want to read that article or whether I just want to mark it as read, mark it as gone, and move it off my plate. And I just go through bam, 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 bam. This one looks interesting. You click on that one, you read it, you take anything interesting from it, and then you move on to the next one. So I am never going around. Like, what I used to do before I realized that you could just get everything fed into one system is I'd visit one website and I'd think, you know, I haven't visited this other website in a while, so I'm going to visit this other website, and then I wonder what so-and-so is up to on their blog, and I'd visit their blog. Now it just all feeds into this one system. I get up in the morning, I go through all of them, check them all off, and then the next day I'll check them again. But I read every day. And I have other systems that I use for reading as well. Typically, I read anywhere from about 5 to 7 books a week. So a few of the other little reading systems that I have is there's always a book in the bathroom, and usually the book in the bathroom is just like some kind of a fun book. A lot of times it's something that doesn't have that much to do with what I'm up to at the moment from a business standpoint, but sometimes it's like a biography or something like that. In bed, like next to my my bedstand, it's usually a to-do book or like a self-help book or something that kind of makes my mind better before I go to bed at night. And the reason for that is that when you sleep, that's when learning is cemented. That's when you actually solve problems. So I've got some friends who read things like biographies at night or read things that they know are going to make them fall asleep at night. I don't really like that approach. I like to read books that teach me things at night so that as I'm sleeping, my brain is automatically set into problem-solving mode. Okay, so I've got a fun book in the bathroom for toilet time. I've got my bedtime reading, which is my self-help type of stuff. And then usually at the coffee table in the living room, there's some kind of a biography, some kind of a book about somebody great who I respect. Okay, so that could be Benjamin Franklin, it could be Michael Jordan or some other great athlete, it could be Andre Agassi, it could be the one that I read recently was Tyler Hamilton's story, the Lance Armstrong story. But it's very interesting. You learn a lot about people and how people succeed and the different ways that people succeed when you're always reading about successful people. So I always have a biography that I'm working through as well. But basically I put all these systems together so I'm constantly reading every single day. I'm a voracious reader. Okay, some of the most successful people in the world, like you look at like Warren Buffett, for example, like he's just like always got his nose buried in a book. I take it one step further and I do a lot of audiobooks and podcasts, like when I'm out training. That's a big one for me too. I rarely listen to music. I save music for when I got to really light a fire and do something hard, but most of the time it's podcasts or audiobooks from a place like Audible. So, and by the way, my book is not available on Audible. I wanted to put it on Audible and I started recording it. And I've recorded 20 hours so far, and I'm in chapter 8. So there's 25 chapters. So it's going to be a while before my book is on Audible. Okay, so the next thing is that you want to talk to people. That Never Eat Alone book is a really good book. I won't read off the slide to you, but so are some of those other books that I've just listed. If you want to learn the art of talking to people and communicating really well. Having to go outside my comfort zone and form actual face-to-face relationships with people who weren't knights in fairy tale books was really important for me. And it really is, I think, one of the things that helped me out quite a bit in life. Not just getting up on stage and talking to people, but having mentors and joining mastermind groups in particular. So I'm a member of 3 different mastermind groups, and that's just a group of people who I'm able to bounce stuff off of, who keep me accountable, who I'm able to mentor a little bit so that I learn this whole mentoring thing. I actually also have a mentorship group for personal trainers and physicians and people who want to learn kind of more of the business side of things. But having people around you and not being a lone wolf is really important. And I got to tell you, it was really hard for me to actually join up and begin talking to people. There's one local group that I go to. It's lunches once a month. There's one Facebook mastermind that I'm a part of. And then there's another mastermind that I'm a part of, and we meet on a quarterly basis, so 4 times during the year. Going out and meeting people and becoming involved with people who are successful in the area that you want to be successful in is really important. And if your job doesn't really revolve around masterminds and mentorship groups, at least knowing the art of small talk and communication and interpersonal relationships and understanding that it is very, very important that you know how to communicate with people, it's very important. With my kids right now, whenever my kids are with me, and I meet somebody, because I want to make sure my kids don't turn out to be like I was when I was a kid, which was hiding behind the leg like this when we'd meet somebody new. I make sure and go out of my way to shake somebody's hand, to look them in the eye, to make that eye contact, to give them a firm handshake and to smile. And then I have my kids do the same thing, repeat their name, do everything necessary to start to cement those good communication skills. It's so important that you develop the ability to be able to talk to people. And you can practice. Like I mentioned that I went on a walk by the river. I practice when I'm walking. When I'm coming up on somebody, I totally creep them out. They probably think I'm some kind of a stalker, pull them into the bushes. But I look them in the eye and I say, hey, nice day, how you doing? And people like it. They usually open up, they smile, but it helps you go outside your comfort zone. Sadly, I actually learned that from a guy who teaches guys how to pick up girls at a bar. He's like, well, the first thing you got to do is you got to walk around and make eye contact when you're out on walks. I don't use it for that skill. But it actually is a good tip. Getting comfortable, just like making eye contact with strangers. Very important skill. And some of these books are really good too. I hope you got a chance to write them down. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the fitness and the biohacking stuff now, just because that's a big part of how I take care of my body and what I do. So like I mentioned, every morning when I wake up, I roll over, I put on this little heart rate monitor, and I test what's called my heart rate variability. Now, your heart is the most powerful generator of electromagnetic energy in your entire body. It's 60 times greater than your brain. And your heart actually has an electrical signal that emanates about 8 to 10 feet out from your body. So what this means is that your heart and your heart's rhythm and your electrical rhythm can actually affect other people. There's also this nerve that's formed when you're a little baby and you're growing inside your mom's womb. There's this nerve called the vagus nerve that connects your heart and your brain. And that means that the way that your heart is beating and the electrical rhythm of your heart actually affects your own thought patterns and brain waves, and the thought patterns and the brain waves and the mood of people who are around you. How many of you have been like laying awake at night next to your loved one or your spouse, and you can just feel like something's not right in the room? Usually for me, if I feel that way, I wake up and I roll over and I can see that my wife's awake and staring at the wall, and that always means a bad thing. Like, guys, if your wife is awake and she's staring at the wall, that's always a bad sign. But it's so weird because I can sense that sometimes without even looking at her, and sometimes it's the opposite. I'll keep this PG, but maybe you've had like crazy wild sex, right? And everything just feels awesome, and you feel like your bodies are just like synced afterwards, and you fall asleep like a baby. And the reason for this is that heart rate variability, that heart's electrical rhythm and its ability to change you, your mood, and the moods of people around you. So there's all sorts of things you can do. You can test your blood, you can test your saliva, you can go to a biomechanics studio and get video set up and test your running and your cycling. But if you're going to test one thing, I think the most important thing is to test that heart rhythm, that electromagnetic energy that your heart is producing every single day, so that you know whether you're stressed. And if you're an athlete, this actually goes one step further. If you're an athlete, you can actually know if you've overdone it, if you've overcooked yourself on the previous day's workout and you need a little bit more recovery. You could wear the app after you eat a meal and you could see how a meal is actually affecting your nervous system. But just like everything, there's an app for that. And there's a variety of apps out there that you can wake up in the morning and use to test your heart rate variability and to know your body and to know your stress levels. There's one called the Sweet Beat app. There's one called the Omega Wave. There's one called the BioForce. There's a really affordable one called the Azumio. It's either their stress, they've got one called the Stress Check and one called the Stress Doctor. I don't remember which one it is. But basically, measuring your heart rate variability is really important, and it's so easy. Everybody can do it. Everybody can understand it. And it's so important because, like I mentioned, it affects you and your mood and your stress levels, and it affects the people around you. It even affects your animals. Like they've done studies on jockeys, and when they walk in to see the horse, if their heart rate variabilities are aligned, they have a lot better race. Like they actually know that the person and the animal are synced. So this is really cool stuff, and that's the one thing that I go out of my way to measure every day. Incidentally, that is not a picture of a heart rate variability measuring device. That is a pulse oximeter. That's another cool measurement. I also have another one of those next to my bedside. I didn't want to freak you out with too many biohacks, but I test my pulse oximetry too, just because it's so easy to do while I'm testing my heart rate variability. It tells you how oxygenated your body is, and whether you're an athlete or whether you just want to enhance your cognitive performance and your mood, if you can achieve an oxygen saturation that's about 96 to 99 each morning, it's a really good sign. If it's not up there, you can start to dig in and see if you have iron deficiencies or ferritin deficiencies, or maybe you're just overworked or stressed or something like that. But heart rate variability, and then to a little bit of a lesser extent, this pulse oximetry, two really good tests to do. And by the way, if you have questions at the end about other self-quantification techniques, like I test my blood 4 times a year and I test my gut every year, and there's other things that you can do too, depending on who you are. But the two that I just told you are cheap and easy. Okay, so this is something I actually get made fun of for a lot, and that is the fact that I place such a great deal of importance on sleep that I'm just a total sleep princess. It kind of started when I got a sleep mask, and I realized that when I wore a sleep mask, it helped me to sleep better. And I knew that that was good because if you don't sleep, you die. I talk about this in my book, but even though your muscles repair and recover when you're awake, and you could actually build muscle when you're awake and walking around, the same is not true of your nervous system and your neurons. So memories form when you are asleep. Learning happens when you are asleep. So if you don't sleep, basically your brain begins to atrophy and degrade. And they've done studies where they've sleep-deprived rats and lab animals, and they've definitely found that you die earlier if you don't sleep. So I place a great deal of importance on sleep. I also sleep a lot just because I'm an athlete, and it really does help with athletic performance as well. But a few of the things that I do. Oh boy, here we go. Passion flower extract. How many of you have woken up at like 2 or 3 or 4 a.m. and you've got thoughts racing through your head about what happened the day before or what you have to do the next day? That definitely happens to me. Passion flower extract makes your brain release something called gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, which is a natural relaxing neurotransmitter. And it's not addictive, and it doesn't cause issues that would happen if you were to go out and buy GABA at like Walgreens or the pharmacy. So totally different, just causes an endogenous natural release. So passion flower extract, just put a little bit under my tongue and hold it for about 30 to 60 seconds. It works really well. I mentioned the 5-minute journal. I find that when I journal, I sleep better. Like I mentioned, if you're journaling or if you're reading self-help books before you go to bed at night, you dwell on those things subconsciously while you're asleep, and you become a better person as you sleep. So I make sure that I do my journaling, and at night my journal asks me about the nice things that happened to me that day, what I'm grateful for that happened to me that day, and then it asks me what the one thing is that I could have done that day to make that day even better. Okay? So very simple, and I just answer that question, or those questions I go to sleep. Infrared light therapy has been shown in athletes to increase sleep time by 17 minutes. And that's pretty significant when you think about an increase in quality sleep time. And it works for other people too. It's very easy. When I'm reading, instead of having the lights on in my room, I have this bulb that is on a stand, and it's an infrared light bulb. You can get a full-on infrared light system for $100, $150, or you can just get an infrared bulb for about $10 off of Amazon, and you just shine it on your body while you're reading. I shine mine slightly away because the light's a little bit bright, but it's warming, and these infrared waves actually enhance your sleep. Okay, so it's an infrared light, and it also kind of sets the mood. It gets kind of romantic in there. The thing that's not romantic, though, is the biomat. Okay, so if you like to own nice things, this also releases infrared light into your body while you're asleep. I use it for naps during the day. I sleep like a baby. It's like snuggling up to this nice warm teddy bear. But after my afternoon nap, I actually take it off my bed and put it away because Ben doesn't get laid if the biomat's on the bed. I can tell you that right now. It's just, it's hard, and it's got these little crystals in it and stuff. So it's a very, very cool sleep tool, and it's got some really cool research behind it. It's like a grounding mat or an earthing mat, but it doesn't subject your body to the same amount of electrical pollution as something like that does. So it's called a biomat. You can put it underneath your bed. And again, I use it for naps. My kids like to sleep on it. My wife sleeps on it. I've caught her sleeping on it before, and they're taking a nap on it. But I take it off at night before I go to bed. One of the other things that's on there, and there's a lot of other sleep hacks, but these are some of the big wins, right? Blue light blocking glasses. You can get these for $10. You can get a fancy pair, like gaming glasses. There's a company called Gunnar that makes them for $60, $70. But they block blue light wave spectrum from screens, e-readers, iPhones, computers, TVs. Blue light shuts down your melatonin production really significantly. So you get basically what's called iPad insomnia, and you have a hard time falling asleep. But you can cheat a little bit. And I don't know about you, but I find it pretty hard not to check email for 3 hours before bed, or to like never turn on my phone after it gets dark at night. I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. So I wear these blue light blocking glasses that at least makes it so that I'm not shutting down melatonin production when I'm using these devices. And they're easy. They're easy to get your hands on. Sleep is so important. I know this all sounds really nerdy and really geeky. And when I go camp out underneath the stars, I just crawl into the tent and go to bed. But when I'm at home, I'm kind of into the whole better living through science thing. And if I can enhance sleep and get even more deep sleep than maybe my caveman ancestors would have, I'll do it. So that's my personal sleeping chamber. The reason that I titled this slide, Cool Your Brain, as one of my tips is because things like Wi-Fi routers, electromagnetic fields from cell phones, gluten, artificial sweeteners, processed ingredients that we find in food, there's all sorts of things that cause what are called the glial cells in your brain to become overactive. And when that happens, brain inflammation sets in. The way that it was described to me by one neurology researcher was it's like a bunch of tiny little chihuahuas with machine guns going like this when all this stuff is going on in your brain. A lot of that inflammation cools down during your deep sleep cycles because that's when neurons repair and recover. That's when your brain repairs and recovers. So if you cool your brain, not only do you get more memories, you get better learning, but you also get better thinking and enhanced cognitive performance throughout the day. So shutting down brain inflammation is very important. Another thing that I personally do for shutting down brain inflammation, I'll give you one last little biohack here because it's cheap and easy to do. I take a gram of curcumin when I get up. Curcumin is one of the most potent neurological anti-inflammatory agents that you can use. Don't take it after a workout because short term it can downregulate protein synthesis, so it's not a post-workout supplement. But like if you wake up early in the morning and you take some curcumin, it's really weird. It's like you start thinking more clearly. And like there's stuff out, like there's smart drugs like aniracetam and a really strong cup of coffee from Starbucks and all this other stuff out there. But curcumin is actually pretty cool because it's natural and it's just shutting down brain inflammation. So we've gone through a lot here. Choose your passion, be different, delegate and outsource, produce every day, do the hard thing first, write stuff down, read, talk to people, know your body, and cool your brain. Those are the top 10 things that I do in my life that are going to help you get the most out of business, out of your body, out of your life. And what I'd like to do now, and I don't see anybody holding up any big signs or going like this. So what I'd like to do now is have you guys ask your questions if you have any. Usually I'm so thorough when I present that there are no questions at all, so I'm going to be kind of disappointed here.
Hi. I was interested in when you were talking about the creative process. So you have the bucket list. You probably have it down to kind of a science now, but in the beginning, you don't wait for the creative, spark. But how do you sort of mitigate? How do you bridge that where you're not waiting for the creative spark, but you have a schedule?
Oh, waiting for the creative spark, the creative constipation, right?
Well,
it's
yeah,
like,
I guess
I get
just
this thing
like
to come out.
getting yourself to do it on those days that you're scheduled to do it.
Exactly. So there's two things there. The first is that once you start into this system and you've trained your brain to do specific tasks on specific days, you'll get much better at them. Like, I always look good on Tuesday. Like, I get out of bed and I shave and I put on my nice, because I know I'm going to be on video on Tuesdays. You know, a lot of the other days I'm in my underwear and my hair is all messed up because I know I'm whatever. I'm just in front of a podcasting microphone or I'm writing. So you train your body to be ready for the specific activities that you want it to be ready for on each specific day. And then as far as like the creative block, I'm a big fan of anything that will upregulate brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Aerobic exercise, not weight training, because when you weight train BDNF, which causes neuronal growth and creativity, that stays inside the muscle tissue. But aerobic activity can activate BDNF, like mild aerobic activity, and that could be yoga, that could be walking the dog, anything like that. The other thing that increases BDNF, interestingly, this is a little hack, is roughhousing. So I will wrestle with my kids or take my kids out in the front lawn and tussle with them, move them around a little bit. There's a huge upregulation. This is cool for your kids too because it helps their brains grow. But when you roughhouse, when you fight, when you roll around with other people, there's actually another way that you can do this too, by the way. It's just longer and messier than roughhousing with the kids for a few minutes out on the lawn. But basically, those two things can upregulate your BDNF. And that's another little thing you can do is just, do something that you know is going to spark creativity. So.
As far as nutrition goes, do you have any key foundational concepts that you follow or just your top nutrition tips, I guess?
Yeah. I experimented last year with eating a really high-fat diet, a ketogenic diet. And I think I sent a mixed message out there when I did this to my followers that diet's really good for like weight loss and just general physical performance and it turns you into a beast. That's not the case. So that diet was 80 to 90% fat. It was on any given day about 5 to 20% protein, 5 to 10% carbohydrates. And I was doing it because I wanted to see if I could generate a bunch of what are called ketones, which your body produces when it burns fatty acids. And so by generating a lot of ketones, I know that three things actually happen. You increase your cognitive performance, you increase your endurance performance because your diaphragm and your heart tissue rely upon those ketones as energy, and you also get a greater release of adrenaline once you actually start working out. But the problem is it's tough on your hormones, and it's also really, really hard when you walk past an Italian restaurant to be eating an 80 to 90% fat-based diet. So a more ancestral diet is what I am a proponent of for just about everybody in this room. For nearly anybody who is of like a Northern European ancestry, the way that our ancestors ate from an epigenetic standpoint in terms of the amylases that we produce, our incretin hormones or gut hormones, the amount of insulin released by our pancreas, it's about a 50 to 60% fat, 20 to 30% protein, and then depending on the level of physical activity for that specific day, 10 to 30% carbohydrate, with the higher amount of the carbohydrate coming on the days for which you're more physically active. Now there are some people who are like Pacific Islanders, sub-Saharan Africa. Like there are areas of the world where people naturally produce more salivary amylase. They're able to process carbs a little bit more efficiently. Their pancreas releases less insulin in response to things like banana and white rice and citrus fruits. You could get 23andme.com genetic testing to really figure out where your ancestry is. But if you know your ancestors were from Norway or Spain or England or Europe or Australia, New Zealand, like those kind of places, it's at 50 to 60% fat, 23% protein, 10 to 30% carb. And then the only other little thing that I do is because your body has two different ways that it can shove glucose into muscle tissue. It can either cause the pancreas to release a bunch of insulin, which long term can affect your insulin sensitivity. It can affect the cell receptors for insulin on the cell surface. That's one way, though, that your body can shove glucose and carbohydrate into muscle tissue. The other way is via what's called a non-insulin dependent glucose transporter system. What that means is that there is a way that you can shove glucose into muscle tissue without insulin being involved. And those particular pathways get upregulated after two different scenarios: high intensity interval training and resistance training or weightlifting. So what I'll do is save the most of my carbohydrate for after I've done those type of activities. So my typical day, I'll do weight training or high intensity interval training at about 5 or 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and then I'll eat the majority of my carbohydrates for that day. And for me, that's usually a big glass of wine and some dark chocolate, which sounds like a really weird thing to eat before dinner, but that's when I know that I can just indulge in that stuff and it's not going to hurt me. So, so that's the way that I time things and do it. So, other questions? Yes.
Is there any such thing as a half-price weightlifting tip?
A half-price weightlifting tip. There's free weightlifting tips abound. You know, I really like the concept, and there's this really good book called Body by Science by a guy named Doug McGuff. I like that book because it introduces the concept of peripheral pressure actually driving blood back into your heart so that when you weightlift, you don't get a sharp increase in central blood pressure in your heart, but you instead get like this cardiovascular training effect as blood gets pumped back to your heart. And the program that Doug goes into in the book, which typically when somebody comes to me for weight training, especially if they're just getting into weight training that I use with folks, is it's anywhere from 60 to 120 seconds of time under tension for a set. So what I mean by that is you would do, for example, 6 reps of 10 seconds up, 10 seconds down on one machine, say the chest press. And then you move on and you do that same thing. 6 reps, 10 seconds up, 10 seconds down on the pull down. And then like the leg press, the seated row, and the shoulder press. And that would be like your 12 to 15 minute weight training workout for the day. Low impact, you get a cardio and a strength training effect. And it's kind of an easy way to kind of get into weight training without doing damage to your body. So the book is Body by Science by Doug McGuff. And it's a really good book to own. And then the next level up that I'd say like the next book to own if you're getting into weight training would be Starting Strength by Mark Ripito. And Starting Strength teaches you basic barbell moves. And just doing heavy lifts with a barbell is the best way to get fit in the weight room fast. It was actually my workout this morning when I was in the free weight section at U of M was it was incline bench press, squat, deadlift, and weighted pull-up. 5 rounds of that with 5 reps on each. And just a really simple, it's 5x5 type of weight training protocol. So it works really well. And it's just simple to wrap your head around.
We did have a question from our online audience asking if you could please put up the book list from your slides, if you could go back to that list.
Sure. Right there.
And here's another question.
And can you also speak on gut health a little bit? Do you do any regular supplementation like probiotic, glutamine, and you referenced one test that you get done annually. What was that?
Sure. The biggest issue that I see with guts nowadays is that we live in a relatively overprotected, germ-free environment, meaning antibacterial hand soap, antibiotics, processed food that's been packaged or heat treated that doesn't have a lot of the live bacteria in it. You know, kids who are being fed formula instead of breast milk, kids who are being born via C-section versus passing down the birth canal, which has a lot of that beneficial flora in it. Kind of turning away from the whole ancestral concept of slow food and fermentation and using things like kimchi and kefir and kombucha and all these weird foods. And as a result, a lot of people have like floral wastelands in their gut, meaning very, very low levels of bacteria in general, or an overgrowth of bad bacteria because there's not enough good bacteria there to balance it out. And so there are little things that you can do, like I don't use antibacterial hand soap. I only actually use soap in the shower about once every 2 or 3 days. And the rest of the time, I just let bacteria and dirt and stuff kind of live on my skin. My apologies to the front row. But I basically allow myself to just be exposed to dirt and bacteria and germs. I eat a lot of fermented foods, wide variety of fermented foods, like the kimchi and the kefir and the yogurt and anything pickled, anything that hasn't been like heat processed at the grocery store. And a lot of times, you kind of got to learn to do some of this stuff yourself if you really want the good bacteria. It's kind of scary to make your own kombucha because there's like horror stories out there of people, you know, getting really sick from fermenting and making some kind of a moonshine on their kitchen counter. But there's a really good book out there called Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. I really like that book. But yeah, the idea here, I mean, there's a reason that kids who grew up on farms around animals and also around a lot of other kids get sick, have less ADD, less autism, less depression, less issues that are related to autoimmune disorders compared to other kids, and it's because they're not living their lives in these clean, pristine environments. So, you know, if you were born via C-section, if you were fed formula when you were a kid, if you've ever been on a big dose of antibiotics, if you used a lot of antibacterial hand soap, I would recommend that you just get on like a good therapeutic grade probiotic to repopulate your gut flora for about 8 to 12 weeks, and then gradually wean yourself off of supplements and just learn how to eat like real fermented food that introduces a wide range of bacteria into your digestive tract. And by wide range, like, I mean it, like switch yogurt brands every month so that you're getting some different forms of that bacteria. So you always want to figure out new ways to repopulate your body. And then if you really want to get a glimpse, best panel out there that you could get is called the GI Effects Panel. They've got an actual number assigned to their panels for gut testing, and the one called the 2200 and the 2205 is really good. My doctor can order that for me with my insurance copay. I pay $99 for that test, and it gives me a lot of really good information. And it's a GI Effects 2200 and the 2205 put together. It tells me everything, like what I'm resistant to and sensitive to for like oil of oregano versus ginger versus golden seal. Tells me bacteria, parasites, yeast, fungus, everything. So yeah, I'm a total gut geek when it comes to that stuff.
2 questions. First question was, do you recommend any gut supplementation for a 1-year-old? And then the second question was my original question. Could you talk a little bit about your mentoring program for trainers?
Yeah, for a 1-year-old, were they breastfed or formula? If it was formula, the best thing that you could do is get them on colostrum, because colostrum is what's present in mammals' milk that actually seals up the linings of the gut. So kids who don't get colostrum when they're babies, they wind up with leaky guts. And you'll get teenagers with like acne and immune system issues and even obesity, which is related to an imbalance of gut flora. And you can fix that by not just repopulating their gut flora, but also introducing something like colostrum. And you can get it in a supplement form. I personally use one from a goat. It's like a goat-based colostrum called Capra colostrum. The other cool thing about colostrum is they've studied it in athletes. And when you exercise, anytime anybody exercises, is your gut permeability goes up. More stuff is able to leak its way through your gut. And what they've done with colostrum is they've studied athletes exercising in hot conditions and found that when they preloaded with colostrum, it seals up the gut lining and makes them able to exercise better without gut distress in the heat. I'm not a fan of using colostrum year-round because it is pro-growth, right? It helps a baby animal grow into a big animal. Anytime anything is pro-growth, I have concerns about a potential like carcinogenic effect. So I just personally load with creatine for about 2 weeks before any event that I do that's hot, like long, hard outdoor exercising. But for a child, like I'd get them on a colostrum supplement for a good year or so to repopulate. And then a really good book, Dave Asprey has a good book called The Better Baby Book. I really like that one for children. My mentorship program, what I do with that is every month I do a workshop where I teach business building concepts and also usually focus in on something that's really geeky, really nerdy, way out there in terms of exercise science or nutrition. So what I mean by that is the stuff that you'd have to have like an exercise science degree or a personal training certification or nutrition certification or something like that to be able to understand, like the stuff that would just be boring to the general population if I put it out on a podcast. So I teach that stuff to make personal trainers and coaches and nutritionists better at what they do, combine that with the business building tips, and it's a 12-month curriculum that you go through. And then at the end you get what's called the superhuman certification. How's that for a cheesy? Yeah. There you go.
We have an online question. Do you watch TV or go to the movies?
Yes, sometimes. So I don't get TV reception. I go to the movies maybe once every 2 or 3 months. I'll go see a movie, maximum. I watch Hulu, and on Hulu, I watch MasterChef, my favorite show. Sometimes I'll watch what's the Modern Family, for comedy, and such a tough question. I really that's like one of my big productivity hacks is I just like try and stay away from TV and movies. Last movie I tried to watch was Wolf of Wall Street, but I turned that off after about 20 minutes because I just realized it was about how messed up the lives of rich people are. So, so not much.
Really enjoy the podcast. Who's been one of your favorite guests that you've had on the podcast, and what do you look for when you're going to bring on a guest for your show?
Oh man, that is such a good question. Probably you'd look at the people that I've had on multiple times as podcast guests. Dr. Timothy Noakes, the physiologist from South Africa, who's always on the cutting edge, and he always has a bunch of haters because he's always doing something different. Like recently, just like explaining how we really don't need Gatorade. That was one of his latest spiels, and after that actually went on the deal about how athletes don't need carbohydrates. But he's a really good guy. If I had to think of somebody else I've had on who I really liked, who doesn't include Brock. Dr. David Minkoff, he's like a guy he's a physician in Florida. He runs a anti-aging longevity clinic. He's done 40 plus Ironman triathlons. He's always got a wealth of really good information as well. So he'd be another favorite. I really like the physicians and the researchers and stuff because I like to pick their brains. And then finally, I'd say Dr. Peter Attia. He has a website called Eating Academy at eatingacademy.com. Brilliant guy, and he does a lot of research on ketogenesis and high-fat diets and kind of how you can get by eating less sugar. Some of the little hacks that you can do. Like I learned from him that when you switch to a high-fat diet, your body dumps not just carbohydrates but also sodium and water. So when he switches somebody to that diet for the first 2 weeks, you eat 2 cubes of the chicken bouillon per day. And that fixes a lot of the issues that people think they're having with low blood sugar. It's really just low sodium when you start onto a low carb diet. So it's a little hack. I'm a bigger fan of healthy stuff like sea salt, but how do I choose if they're good, or how do I choose who to get on? When I'm reading all this stuff, I just pay attention to who's got something interesting to say, who needs a voice to say it, and this is one thing I love about my job, I'll read a book that I love, and I'll just get a hold of the author and be like, hey, want to come talk about this book on my podcast? I picked up some really cool things. And whenever I'm reading a book, it's all dog-eared because I'm always thinking, if I get this person on the podcast, I want to ask about this, about this, about this. So that's kind of cool. I do like that I'm able to just get authors of books on. So.
Hi, I just had a question about fasted workouts. What do you think about them? And I know there's people who are fat adapted who say they just drink water before they go work out.
Yeah, exercising fasted is kind of cool because it can send a message to your body to basically decrease the rate at which telomeres shorten. So it has this longevity, anti-aging effect. Fasting also has that effect. You don't have to exercise fasted to get some of the benefits of fasting. The problem is it also sends a message to your body that it's in a period of stress, starvation, restricted calories. So long-term periods of time spent exercising in a fasted state can eventually downregulate your thyroid set point, your metabolic set point. You got to be really careful with it. If you're going to exercise fasted, I'm at least a fan of doing something like eating amino acids beforehand. It's not like a steak or eggs, but amino acid capsules or amino acid powders. And those bring your blood levels of amino acids up so that you don't cannibalize as much muscle. Unless you're like me and you were a complete hunk on stage who wanted to eat up a bunch of muscle tissue to do Ironman triathlon. And that's actually what I did. I did long fasted workouts and I just ate up a bunch of muscle doing that. But for most people, I'm trying to put muscle on now because I'm seeing more and more evidence to the life extending benefits of having pretty decent amount of muscle and bone density going into the latter half of your life. So I think it's important. So I'm careful with fasted workouts. There are things that can simulate what fasting does. Bitter melon extract is one, activates the same pathways that fasting does. High intensity interval training can act similarly as well. So you can do these things without like restricting calories for sure. So.
We've talked a lot about specific endurance, race day nutrition in races. Of all the things you've tried, what do you like the best, and what are you using today for Spartan races?
For Spartan races, nothing. It's just like, I don't know, roll out of bed and eat a banana and go and get muddy. For Ironman right now, most of my athletes are using really low amounts of a slow release starch that allows higher amounts of fat oxidation to occur, and that's called super starch. And then they're combining that with a little bit of oil, specifically medium chain triglycerides, and those bypass digestion and go straight into the Krebs cycle to be utilized as fuel and converted into ATP. So usually a little bit of that mixed in with this long chain starch, and then finally the amino acids I was talking about 5 to 10 grams of those per hour. So starch plus fat plus amino acids, that allows you to tap into the 30 to 60,000 calories worth of energy you have in your own storage adipose tissue. And then from there on out, like let's say it's for an Ironman, you can add little hacks in. You can add like there's antioxidants you can add in if you want to. You can add electrolytes in. There's a variety of things that you can dump in, but the base is super starch plus fats plus amino acids. And then once you get out on the run, if you're in an Ironman, oil that sits in a flask, when it gets hot, it just tastes it tastes like rotten fish. So I don't do oil in the actual run flask, so oil is only on the bike, and then in the run, it's the super starch plus the amino acids. And what I've been doing now is just running with nut butters. I just posted a list of a bunch of really good nut butters that I like on my blog. I like them because they don't have sugar, they don't ferment in your gut. It's a little bit of a switch up from drinking liquids out of a water bottle. So I'm a fan of those with just plain water now. So I'm racing the Spartan Beast in Utah. That'll be about a 3.5 hour race in a couple of weeks. And for something like that, I will want something out there to eat with me. So I'll wear this thing called a spy belt, which is a little belt that kind of has elastic properties you can shove stuff into. And I'll put 2 or 3 gels in there and then just rely on water from the actual course. So, so that's what I'm doing these days as far as like on course nutrition type of stuff goes. So.
Hi, Chris Tucker is my name, and I'm a big fan of the podcast as well. I had a question. Like a big part of your kind of agenda and your thinking and your podcasts are about becoming optimal, superhuman, whatever. And I was wondering if you've created any type of list or hierarchy of all of the variables that we could have control over that would be most scientifically backed for ranges of optimum, like whether it's hormones, neurotransmitters, gut health, and I think it'd be interesting to like have that to say, okay, this is what I need to shoot for, and then have various whatever activities, nutrition, supplements that could get us into that range.
Absolutely. The best one is 20 feet to your left. On that table over there. that's got most of it in there. The other 2 best resources for you, even though lab value ranges range a lot, and even the thyroid ranges are based off of like a population that in my opinion has subpar thyroid health. Believe it or not, the Wikipedia page for blood reference ranges is actually pretty good. So that one's got some pretty good numbers on it. And then as far as which supplements actually address certain nutrient deficiencies in a pretty good way, I like the website examine.com. They've got really good stuff. That's one of the blogs I subscribe to, and it's a pretty good compendium of non-biased research on supplement efficacy, and it's pretty good. You could spend hours and hours on there just researching like one supplement. But I would say, like my book, the Wikipedia blood reference ranges page, and then also the examine.com supplements reference website. Those are all pretty good places to start as far as that goes. If you test with somebody like Wellness FX or Thorn FX, which does lab testing through Wellness FX now, you get a dashboard that prints off all your lab values and gives you like a chart that shows whether you're high or low. And so rather than looking at a sheet and matching it up to Wikipedia or something like that, you actually get a number that each of your numbers is next to, so you can see whether you're in high, medium, or low range. So that there's actually an online dashboard for that too. So.
Then another online question. What do you do when you cannot complete the specific tasks that are on your bucket system?
Freak out. I go into panic mode. No, there's a free day for that. And I hate to say this because I really like as much as possible for it to be a day that I'm not doing too much at all, but it's Sundays. Like, I will, if I have to, wake up early in the morning on Sunday and get the stuff done that I literally, you know, maybe some emergency happened, a website crash or something, but I do have a free bucket. My only rule is, you know, it's still going to be a family day, and it's still going to be like a rest and recovery day. But if I got to get up early in the morning and set my alarm for 5:30 or whatever and just get it done, I have a free day for that. So I think maybe, how many questions do we have time for? Maybe 1, 2 more questions? Okay, let's go 2 more questions. Let's make them good.
Ben, I'm interested in your point number 7 about reading, and I recently listened to your podcast with Ty Lopez, and I was wondering if you had some tips on how you get through those 5 to 7 books a week and all the other information that you gather. How do you organize what you learn from that so you have that accessible later?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always read with the pages folded over plus the pen method. So for me, it's circle, fold over page. When I go to that fold over page, when I'm on the Kindle, I just use the highlight function on the Kindle so I can go back and look at what I've highlighted from that particular book. I shouldn't say I never had to learn how to speed read. I bought my kids this same book that I grew up with. It's called Victory Belt, or not Victory Belt, Victory Drill. Victory Drill is just like a page with a list of words on it. You go through them as fast as you can. You just time yourself, and then you go to the next list, and the words get increasingly more complex throughout the book. And my mom made me do a Victory Drill book lesson every day when I was a kid. Maybe that's why I can read really fast. I don't know. But I never had to learn how to speed read. If you did have to learn how to speed read, probably the best resource out there for that is Jim Quick. I'm actually interviewing him on Thursday. JimQuick.com, Kwik. He teaches memory, learning, and speed reading. And he's got some really cool resources on his site. He's got a blog, he's got some videos, some audios. So that's where I'd start, is just, you know, totally old school, folding over the pages and circling stuff. And then, of course, that Pomodoro technique too. Like, I never sit down and just read for an hour. Like, it's always 25 on, 5 off, kind of like that. So, yes?
You've talked about the emotional dimension, the physical dimension, the mental dimension. What about the spiritual dimension of life?
Yeah, I mean, the spiritual dimension is tied into all this stuff. You know, I have to be careful not to get super political or anything, but basically the idea here is that, for me, the acknowledgement of a higher power is something that gives me very, very good perspective in life. So there are a lot of philosophies out there that say that the goal in life is to find what makes you happy and do what makes you happy. And that's true to a certain extent. There are other philosophies that say, you know, the right thing to do is to do the right thing right now, and that's true to a certain extent. For me, I personally think that from a spiritual standpoint, acknowledgement of a higher power and adherence to a combination of both an internal and an external moral compass is what I personally live by. I also, you know, I do some meditation, I do yoga, but I do it. This is a tough question. This is actually a question I haven't gotten before. I do it with the focus, not that the higher power or that that God is within me or something like that, but I actually believe that there's like a creator of the universe or a higher power who's kind of in charge of everything, and that forms the basis of my meditation and my practice. So I know that was not a super clear answer, but you know, spirituality is important to me. And sometimes when I get a question like that too, I'm not quite sure how to respond because I know this is a very polarizing topic too. So, you know, I want to make sure that I respect other people's beliefs as well.
I think one of the things that strikes me in this is that if there is, in fact, a higher power that has created the universe, he's probably got systems in place for it too. And I think part of what you're talking about is being in harmony with that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, if you incorporate a lot of these concepts, you know, from the heart rate variability training to setting up systems in your life, I think that's really one of the most important things that you'll take away from this. Is it's not about making money or, you know, having some big online business or something like that. It is about having, you know, harmony in your life. I think that harmony is a really good word to use. So yeah, thank you.
Last question.
Hey, Ben. I love your bucket idea, and I want to implement it. However, as a woman, a mom, a wife, there's dinner, laundry, bill paying, stuff that you really can't hand off to somebody else to do. So where do you take that multitasking stuff that has to get done and put it in the bucket?
So there are specific things that you're going to do every day. Like you're going to check email every day. I hope you're going to wash some dishes every day. You don't have to take a shower every day, as you just learned. But you know, I think that when it comes to those type of things, if you've got your buckets set up and you've got your checklist set up, the most important thing is to systematize those other things, to have certain times that you complete certain tasks, to kind of have those in mini buckets through each day. And I kind of sort of have a system like that set up. Like I know that there are some things that are important for me to complete on a daily basis. And that's everything from playing guitar to practicing piano with my kids to doing my journaling. And I actually have a pop-up that pops up on my computer at 6 a.m. So I know that by the time I turn on my computer, that will already be in front of my face. That's just a little reminder of each of those daily tasks. So I make sure that I've gone through and I haven't forgotten to do everything. And even if it is in my mind, it's still written down, so that helps. As far as those daily tasks though, like there's things that I do every day, and I find that if I systematize all the other stuff, the big tasks, get the hard stuff done first, that those little things tend to take care of themselves. So I would say that the most important thing that you can do is to not train your brain to multitask. I like to think of myself as like this Doberman pinscher who just like grabs onto a task and just works on it until it's done, and then I move on to the next one. So if I'm writing an email and I see something pop up on Facebook or Twitter or my phone's buzzing, it's like I have to focus. I have to be like a horse with blinders or like a dog, you know, holding on to a toy that it won't let go of until I finish that one little menial task and then move on to the next. So emails, like I never look at the same email twice. If I open an email, it's getting responded to, period, and then it's done, it's off the plate. So I keep 0 inbox in my email, but I never will start to write an email and then message on my phone and then go take care of something and come back. Like it's always just one thing at a time. But there are those daily tasks that I do. So good question. Hit me with 2 tough questions at the end there.
Final online question. How do people get in touch with you and ask you further questions?
BenGreenfieldFitness.com. That has like links to my Facebook page, my Twitter page, all of that stuff. So that's a really good place to start. That's where I'd go. So thank you.
Well, let's thank you. This was terrific. My God. Pretty smart guy. We have a lot of stuff to give away.
Sweet.
You want to help?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we got names to draw, so I'm going to give you that.
Do I have to do the Vanna White?
Yeah, you can do the Vanna White.
Actually, it's not just you know what I learned the other day, it's even better than Vanna White, is my niece taught this to me yesterday. The princess from the movie Frozen. Show me the stomp.
Oh, sure.
Goes like this. Here I am. Anyways, Sedgway.
Okay.
Is this a first name and a last name on here? Is that
I
how
don't
this
know
goes?
the answer to that.
First name, last name.
Okay. Adam Zmikli. Zmikli? Adam Z-M-I-K-L-Y. Okay.
All right, we'll get it to him. He might be online. They're qualified.
All right.
Online?
He gets a book.
Okay, cool.
Gets one of the books. That's great.
Congratulations, Adam. Online.
Thank you, Adam. Let's see. Go ahead. Keep rolling here.
With all vowels and really weird consonants in your name. Chris Tucker.
Chris
Boom.
Tucker.
You get the TRX suspension trainer.
Nice.
Break that out and do some single leg squats.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds terrific.
It's great. Trust me, you'll love it.
This is a $75 gift card.
Okay,
$75
$75 gift card to Dick's Sporting Goods. Crystal Schneider. Crystal Schneider.
Wow, online again.
Crystal Schneider. That's kind of hard to say twice. Okay. What do we have? All right. Angie Nippert for
Angie Nippert.
some bedtime reading. They'll put you to sleep really fast. Okay. What do we have next? Another gift card, $50. Okay. So the crappier gift card goes to Chloe Haig.
This is fun.
This is fun. You
Do this
just
all
have to
night.
hold that box. Just let me know if it's getting heavy. I'll
Guess
trade
that
off
makes
with
me
you.
look like the Vanna.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh, one of those deals.
Ooh. The Fitbit Flex. So you too can track exactly how many calories you're burning every day to 15% accuracy. Renee, I'm just kidding. They're more accurate than that. Renee Johnson. Sweet.
Oh, good.
Okay. Another book. These things are all over here. Anna Peisch.
There's
Did I
Anna.
pronounce that right? Ah.
Close enough. She knew her name.
Anna P. All right. $50 gift. Mark Roberts.
All right.
Nice.
Okay.
Very cool. $50. That's a lot of medicine balls.
I think we're
Dick's
done,
Sporting
but let's see.
Oh, is that it?
We're all done.
Oh. I would have given more pomp and circumstance to Mark, like a
There
drum
you go.
roll, but
Well,
good
good.
job, Mark. All right.
Well, again, thanks
Cool.
for coming. This
Thanks
was
for
great.
having me.
Yep.
Thanks. Oh, and I can sign books, yeah.
Great. So if you want to shake Ben's hand and get a book signed, he'll be here. Thanks
it
again
going?
for coming to Concordia.